We're going to keep things going, and then we'll have another break. But it is an absolute pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Nicole West, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Legends. And really great to have Legends here, which is an organization that I'm guessing many of you haven't heard of, but you've probably interacted with in some fashion, or if you haven't, you will someday. And it's great to have Legends here because I'm oftentimes asked by leadership or trustees that we end up interacting with, okay, this is all great, but like, where's this going? What's a big idea? What's something that really is going to mix things up so that we're not just on the needle going from 1,000 to 1,100 to 1,200 or 3% to 5%? Where's the big ideas in this sector? And again, we're constantly looking elsewhere, saying what's happening in other parts of the world that maybe could be applied to this world of advancement. And I think that what Legends has brought to bear in other categories and what we're optimistic about packaging up for this sector is one of those big ideas. We've had 2 foundation CEOs in the last 3 weeks who are new to their jobs, who've called up and said, hey, my board just hired me, and the specific thing that they told me in my interview is that they wanted me to take us out of the 80s. So 2 different people both referenced the 80s. Great music, great hair, bad strategies for running sales and marketing organizations or fundraising organizations. And so Nicole, through her career, has really helped bring all kinds of organizations into a modern sales and marketing world that we think there are huge implications for this sector. So please join me in welcoming Nicole West from Legends.
Thank you. Well, I don't know how I'm going to compete with the ice cream break that was up there, but I promise you that I will try to be entertaining, hold your attention, and then get us to the ice cream break, because that's really what I prefer to be doing right now, too. So, Brent, thank you very much. Brent and I have met each other over the last year, and it has been a really great budding relationship between Legends and Evertrue, and I'm excited because I just think being in this type of space and having this type of learning going on, I think it's very similar to what our friends at Ivy were doing, right? Minus maybe the pool and the girls with the flamingos and some of the other things. But it's that ideation, right? You have to take time out of your day, out of that regular sort of hustle and bustle, to just stop and ideate and talk to others and have some of those ideas come about. That's what happened when we got to meet Evertrue and Brent, and so hopefully we'll get to share a little bit with you guys today. So let me tell you a little bit about Legends, but before I go there, I'll just give you a little bit of background on who I am. So I got to work and play, I'll call it play, and then you'll realize why. For the New York Knicks, right out of school. You can see, right, why they drafted me. And then also from there, went and worked for some boutique agencies in the city, New York, and worked on things like Nickelodeon and Prudential and NYU, so completely non-sports. And when I did that, I realized that I ran back to sports and actually went back to working on my own consulting business, which I worked with their players and their foundations, and so I started to touch nonprofits there. That was sort of my first entry into the nonprofit world. And players and their foundations and nonprofit world is very interesting, and so we could have that conversation afterwards. But how that gets run and the family sort of side of it and how you kind of come about trying to build those relationships is one that intrigued me, because I came from the for-profit world, and I thought, how great if you could do that and really grow. And so working with that group was amazing. I had a great time doing it. And then I got drafted back to the Knicks, and I spent another 4.5 years there, making it my 2 tours together for 9 years. And then decided again I needed to sort of step away and try something different. And so went and ran a new restaurant business with a friend and developed that brand, and it's now running and is doing wonderful. Evelyn's Kitchen, if you're ever in New York, is a good brownie and blondie. And then left there and went to work for the USTA and ran all the marketing for their pro tennis. So everything from the US Open to Fed Cup, Davis Cup. Any tennis fans in here, hopefully a few, US Open time is coming up soon. And so that brings me to Legends. And so had a little bit of a dabble in nonprofit world. If anybody knows, the USTA is a nonprofit organization. It's what we call the biggest bake sale there is the US Open. And so got to also play in the nonprofit world, but at a profit level. But coming to Legends, I got to play with a whole new group. And that group ranges from our ownership, which is the Yankees, the Cowboys, so strategic partners as Live Nation, and then a great strategic partnership in One World Observatory, which brought us into the attractions world, and I'll share that with you. Am I having some mic trouble? Okay. That better? Okay. And so we are born from the Yankees and the Cowboys coming together, George Steinbrenner and Jerry Jones deciding that when they wanted to build their new arenas and stadiums, there was no hospitality company out there that could deliver the type of service and premium quality that they wanted to have to match the amazing stadiums that they had built. And so they created Legends. So first and foremost, we're a hospitality company that morphed into much more. Our DNA, we believe in being true partners, we believe in being best in class, and we believe in being brand stewards. The brand stewards part is probably what brought me to Legends. It's what I've had throughout my career and kind of has been a thread in that it's really important to me to care for the brand. I believe that's what a brand steward does. And I believe that's what all of you do. You do that on a daily basis when you touch and talk with your alumni and have that ongoing relationship. You're continuing to be the brand steward. We have about 30,000 employees. We have offices in New York, which is where I'm based out of, LA, London, and in Dallas. And so our employees range from being part-time to full-time, but with all of our part-time employees, we come together to about 30,000 employees. So some of our partners, these are some of the people you may have mentioned, or you may be aware of. So we work with the Angels, we work with Villanova, we work with Notre Dame, we work with some of the other partners in the sports and entertainment world from Live Nation. They have over 39 amphitheaters that we operate and run. We also have a number of attractions that we work with. So we've got a lot of partners. It's grown over the years. And we've got a number of services. So I think the best way to show you this is we've got some project development services. And that right now, I'd say one of the biggest projects we're working on, you may have heard the Rams and the Chargers are building this little building in LA. It's called the Los Angeles Stadium Entertainment. We are the project developers there. And so that is one of the projects that we're working on right now. The other is the Bank of California Stadium, which is the Los Angeles Football Club. We just opened that, and we were the developers there as well. Sales, we do everything from premium ticket sales, PSLs, to sponsorships, naming rights, tours. But again, let's show you just so you have a frame of reference. Maybe. There we go. Some of the partners we work with in this space. And so I mentioned Notre Dame. We're just now working on the partnership there where we're running their media rights, but it's much more than that. So if you've heard about that, it's a non-traditional approach there. And then also, you may have heard the Las Vegas Raiders that are soon to be. We're working with them on all of their PSLs as well. And then hospitality, where we were born from. And so AT&T Stadium, New York Yankees, Los Angeles Angels, also the Tennessee Titans. So if you go to any of those places and you're experiencing their concessions or their premium food experience, that's Legends. But we're white label, so that's probably why you haven't heard of us. We like to be behind the scenes. We like our brands to shine. We actually say we're not the legends. The brands we work for are the legends. And so we like to make sure that all of that experience is wonderful, but it's behind that brand that we're working for, not our brand. We also have merchandising clients. So, attractions. This is an interesting one. We started with One World Observatory 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, and we operate and manage that entire experience from the sales to the actual tour and to the cafe experience that's inside of there. From there, we've grown, and we actually just opened the observatory outside of DC in Roslyn County. We also just opened Seattle's Skyview Observatory, which is the tallest building in Seattle. It's much taller than the other building in Seattle. And then also soon to come, Skyrise Miami. But then we also are operating and managing the Shard, which is in London. So one of the interesting things you guys have talked about today, and I got to listen in, is your inside sales team experience and the panel that was up here. And with Legends, we like to go into new spaces and try to sort of mix things up. And so we like to reimagine what could be done and how we can apply some of those other services we just talked about and bring those to bear in that particular market. Attractions is a great example of that. We've run group sales and premium sales experiences for professional sports around the world. And when it came to attractions, we found they had no inside sales teams. Everything was inbound, and they were doing no real proactive outbound efforts, and anybody who was using a third-party effort. We created an inside sales team. We developed a network around that, and to do that, we actually then cultivated a full network around the world where we now have those relationships. That has caused us to change the game when it comes to attractions. Same with concierge and how we manage our concierge experiences, our robust FIT network, which is travel and tourism around the world, and then also dynamic pricing. So if you're in One World Observatory and you're about 5 miles out and you decide you want to hang out in that area, we're geo-targeting you with messages. And depending on if you're 5 miles out or 10 miles out, you're going to get a different price point served up to you. And we're even doing that not just in the app, but with our street teams. So we have street teams that we manage, and based on this proximity of the street team to the particular venue, we will change the pricing out for that street team because that makes a difference. If you're right at our door front, we should be serving you one price point. But if you're 10 miles away and I need to bring you closer, I have to give you a much more enticing offer, right? And I share that with you because that's very applicable to what you're doing. If you're working and trying to get somebody to be involved in the Alumni Association, and maybe they're not involved at all, then the donation level and how you want to pull them in should be at one range. But as you bring them closer and as you pull them up that escalator or that ladder, how you can kind of build that along the way. And doing that through dynamic pricing and automated efforts is really how you can do it in a way that's achievable. Doing that as a manual process is not going to be able to be done and attainable and scalable. There's a couple of our international clients. And then we also have some Edge Experiential is a company that we've did a joint venture with. And so we're very involved in the technology space and sort of the future experience because we see ourselves as an experience company. So everything we touch and do somehow impacts the end user's experience. And so understanding the technology world and how we can bring that to bear, we've partnered up on that, and we're looking into everything from AI to VR and all of those things and how we can bring that to the experience. So Alumni Association Engagement 2.0. I see a lot of faces like, what does that mean? Right now, it doesn't mean anything. But when Brent said, hey, we'd love for you to come and speak and just talk about what you do and how Legends comes into this sort of industry and just disrupts things and then sort of packages them together, I said, well, maybe we should just pull something together and see how this could come together. So right now, you've got a donor who's maybe getting an email, a phone call from a call center during dinner that they don't want to take, and then maybe they're getting some kind of direct mailer. Does that sound right? Can I get some nods to make sure okay. Am I completely off base? Okay, good. So we're capturing some data from that experience. It's probably limited. It's probably sitting in a bunch of silos, and you probably really can't get to it. If you wanted to get to it today or tomorrow, you'd have to maybe put in a project with the IT group or pull something down, and it's going to take 2 months, and then you could maybe do something about that. Is that also right? I'm seeing some nods, yes? Am I off base? Okay. And then, of course, you're analyzing all this data, right? This is coming in, you're finding out how many people opened, you're understanding what they want to do with it, you're seeing how that impacts with their social media, because you've got Evertrue. But other than that, you get all of this, and you got full analytics on how to actually do something, which I call actionable analytics, right? I need to be able to do something with it. That's happening, right? Oh, yes, that's happening. Okay. Is that happening for anybody else? Raise your hand. Okay, so there are 4 of you where that's happening. Everybody give a hand to those 4. So it's happening, but is it happening in the masses? No. So we need it to happen for the masses. And then this is the big part, the communication and interaction. I heard earlier in a conversation, there was a discussion of, well, we have an interaction, and then we give it to this team, and then they have an interaction, and then we give it to this person, and then they close the deal. Right? Did anybody else hear that? So I have a challenge with that. I have a fundamental issue with that, because that's not how I work with anybody else in my life. My engagement with Zappos is not like that. My engagement with Amazon is not like that. These are my close friends, Zappos and Amazon. You may have heard them. They might be your friends too, but they really like me. But they don't have that type of relationship with me. They know me, right? Do they know you? They know who I am. They know what I like. They know what I don't like. They know when to send me messages. They know when to give me a discount, right? You should know your alumni the same way, and that engagement should be the same way. Why? Because they expect it. I expect it. And when it's not that way, I'm done. I can find somebody else. I can find somebody else to buy my shoes from. I can find somebody else who's going to give me my laundry detergent refilled when the little tab says it needs to be refilled, right? There's somebody else who can do that. I can also find somebody else to give my money to. That's the fundamental change. That's the difference that has to take place. My engagement needs to match my engagement at all the other levels. And the biggest challenge that I'll say, and I'm sure most of you know it because I see a lot of heads nodding. It's one thing for me to have that sort of sense of engagement and entitlement to my relationship, but I didn't grow up that way. There was a time when there was no Amazon. I don't even remember. It was horrible. But there was a time. And I'm okay because I can kind of rationalize sometimes. Now, my son never knew a time. He's getting ready to go to high school, and then he'll be in college, and then he'll be an alumni. So, our engagement needs to start now. and the level of engagement and how we're engaging with people, we have to shift that now. And it can't be something that happens overnight, but it also can't be something that takes forever, because this is not working anymore, right? Auto dialing. There's no real follow-ups. You're not creating that deeper engagement. Smiling dialing is what we call it. The other people at the other end are not smiling. Engagement is the goal, and giving is the byproduct. If you can get me engaged, I will give. I am engaged with Amazon. We might as well be married. Same with Zappos, right? There's a couple of people in my life, in addition to my husband, that I'm engaged with. And I have a daily interaction with them. Rent the Runway, they have been part of my engagements, right? So you have to get to a place where your alumni feel the same about you. And the great thing is, much like sports, there's a loyalty already there. You don't have to build the loyalty. There's a love, there's a passion. You just got to tap into it, and you have to show them that you know them. I want to know that you know me. If we go out on a first date, and then we go out on dates 3-4 days later, or however long, I expect that you know a little bit about me. And then the more we date, the more you should know. Or at least that's supposed to how it works. See, if I was more of this age, I'd be like, well, then I was on Tinder, and then, he heard about me, right? But that's how it happens. And ultimately, you want that person to be in your life. It's no different than everybody else in your circle. So you engage with who you want to engage with because of how they treat you and what they know about you and how they respond back. So an engagement center is not a call center. An engagement center is not a digital group that's sitting over here. An engagement center is a place that is fully integrated, where they're specialists, but that everybody in that engagement center knows how to do multiple things. Why? Because that's how the world works right now. My customer service person at Zappos also knows how to take an order, also knows how to fix my problem, and also knows how to make sure that they resolve that on the back end, right? They've got multiple things that they're doing. They're not passing me along. You know why? Because they know they'll lose me. You need to make sure that the people who are working in that engagement center are taking a holistic approach. I know this is like radical thinking, because that means that maybe the person who was just answering calls about events and doing RSVPs actually could be engaging about something else, like a donation. I feel like she's like, amen to that, sister. Yes. Yeah. And multitasking, you guys are all asked to multitask. In my world, I wear 20 hats, and I'm sure each one of you do too. The same is true for this engagement center. So that means different training. That means a different approach. That means shaking up some of the silos within your groups. And that means cross-training. And that allows you to then have that person be able to do multiple things. And then all of a sudden, people who maybe aren't at the development officer level are getting treated more like they are along that path. Content, content, content. So we have that great relationship, but we have that great relationship, yes, because you know me, but also because you're sharing things with me, right? I want to know what's happening at my school. I want to be engaged, but I want to know what I want to know. So I care about saving the whales. I don't really care about how many trees got planted on campus. So if you're sending me information and content, one, at the very least, can that be prioritized so that my most important information is what I see, so then when I open that email, I really want to read it? Or you know what college I went to, and you know what clubs I was involved in, and has that changed? Well, yeah, you should know that too, because you got some data coming in from Evertrue and the social, and it tells you that I run a 5K for cancer every year. That should set a flag up. Why is that? Why is that important to me? Well, content about that might be interesting to me. And what is that cadence along the way that draws me in even more? And it's not something that happens right away, right? So it's not like, oh, well, we sent her an email and it had, something that was about whales and she opened it, but we didn't see her donate. So move on. It's a process. It's a relationship. And just like your development officers are grooming and having that process, and they go on trips and they have meetings and they do all of these things, the same true. You have to have multiple touch points. And those multiple touch points, if you do them and you do them consistently, and you start to show people that you know them, and you start to engage with them, it'll start to pay dividends. Because then it becomes easy for me to give. Why? Because I know where my money's going. Because I've been reading about it. Why? Because they've been telling me what I wanted to know, not just what they want me to know. So, my time's wrapping up, but we've started doing this a little bit in your space. And we've gotten some really good results, and we're having more conversations, and people are starting to have even more conversations with us. But some of the folks that we're working with and having some of this take place in is folks like Villanova, the Rose Bowl Foundation. So really looking into the content that we're providing, really looking into the strategy behind it, launching campaigns and doing that in a way that makes sense and that is segmented for the person that we're speaking with. Rose Bowl Legacy Foundation, same thing. You may not have realized they're a foundation, but they are. I'm inspired to preserve the Rose Bowl Stadium. Learn more. Tell me why. And we're taking that information, and then we're feeding that back into the database, and then we're sending them information back that relates to what they've told us. Everything is a cookie crumb. People leave cookie crumbs everywhere. That's why they're called cookies on your website. You guys leave cookies all the time. You're leaving cookies right now? That information is very valuable, but you have to do something with it. It has to be actionable insights. So this is just an example, right? And this is not even the dynamic version that we have, but just showing you how we're looking at the different channels, how everything is fully integrated. There's nothing happening over here that this hand doesn't know over here. So I leave you with this. Reimagine, disrupt, repeat. Reimagine, disrupt, repeat. Anybody want to say it with me? Reimagine, disrupt, repeat. That is what I would tell you to go back and do on Monday, after you had some cocktails on Friday.
Yeah. Is there a question for Nicole? I mean, basically, they have looked at the space and they've said, this call center model is crazy. I mean, we're taking people from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday who are the lowest paid, most poorly trained people in our operation, and we're making them responsible for securing hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of donations. Like, that wouldn't happen anywhere else, and it is a industry best practice here. And so we're trying to reimagine what that could look like. And I know many of you are as well. So any questions for Nicole or frankly, advice as she and her team continue to do some of that reimagining? Very back.
We are not a secondary ed institution or a nonprofit, a national governing body. We're
U.S. Lacrosse.
I know somebody over there. Brett Hurwitz.
Oh yeah, we recently had our call center. When somebody calls in with a problem about their membership or getting the magazine or not getting their magazine, at the end of the call, if it goes well, they're now asking for donations. They've taken somebody who calls in with a problem and converted them to a donor.
Woohoo. Let's give her a round of applause. That's awesome.
Just a different way of thinking, but it has gotten the entire organization to think about the fact that we need to think of our members as possible donors and treat them with that respect.
So I applaud you for that. And I know that that may not have been easy. It might not have gone over well, right? Somebody's like, well, that's not my job. I don't do that. But as you all know, jobs change. Things happen, right? And we have to evolve. I'll tell you, at Legends, my boss is always very clear to tell us, we are all salespeople. I'm chief marketing officer. I am a salesperson. Same is true for the database analytics guy. Same is true for everybody in the organization. Other questions or comments? Oh, back there.
So how much segmentation is too much segmentation in terms of the days we're living in? Obviously you want to present content. Excuse me. You want to present content that's relevant, to our alumni, but how much is too much, and what techniques have you used in kind of leveraging that balance?
That's a great question. So how much segmentation is too much? I believe in everything in moderation. And so I do think you can get to a point where it's too much segmentation. But what I would say to you is segmentation is great with this other little thing called automation. If there is not the automation on the other side, then segmentation can only be minimal, right? So if you're doing a direct mailer and you're segmenting out that list, but you don't have somebody on the other end to make 4 different creatives for you, for that direct mailer, so that you can really make sure that those different segments are seeing different creative and different messaging, then it means nothing. With automation, with support, with resources, you can be more segmented. I think you get too segmented when you start to look at your pool and you're like, okay, the tyranny of numbers, right? I'm talking to 5 people about, saving the ants. And only those 5 people care about saving the ants.
It's a big issue.
It is. It's very, not one to be laughed at. But yes, so that's too much, right? But when you have the ability to say there's a mass group, and mass group could be based on revenue, mass group could be based on interest, right? You have to determine what the goals are. So once you determine your goals and you're very clear and specific about what is it that we're looking to achieve, then segment based off of those goals. And if it's a revenue-based, then we know how we should segment. And when you start to get down too far, don't just dismiss that lower group. Go, okay, well, how many of those in that lower group do we need to donate $5 to make that worth our while? If we can't achieve that, then let's put that to the side, save that for another campaign, and let's go after these groups. So it's got to be correlated to your goal, and it's got to be correlated back to your automation and how much of it you can actually handle. Which is why engagement center and multi-purpose of training and cross-training, you increase your numbers. Because the person who was just picking up the phone to answer questions or, book that RSVP now can also ask for a donation. I just doubled my staff.
So speaking of goals, one of our goals is to, at Raise 2019, hopefully have examples of where this kind of concept has really been implemented, and we can talk through what we've learned, and it's great to hear that there's some precedent from U.S. Lacrosse and others. Please join me for ice cream and in thanking Nicole from Legends.